Welcome back to the 25 Days of Flows, the Power Automate Advent Calendar. And we're going to take a short break from approvals. We still have 2 more approvals to do, but I think I'm going to spread them out so I don't bore you with too much approval stuff, even though approvals for me are amazingly important to almost all of the business processes that I've done. I still think I need more diversity in our 25 days, so we're going to take a little break. And here's what we're going to do today. Let me remind you of maybe a while back. I don't know how old you might be, but there used to be a toy that we had, I know when I was young, and it looked like an 8-ball, like the 8-ball that you would have on a pool table. But when you flip it over, and it was huge, so it wasn't the size of an 8-ball. It was like, I would say, the size of a grapefruit. And this 8-ball that said 8 and was black, if you flipped it over, it had a little window. And so you could shake it or not, but it had magical capabilities. It actually could answer your questions looking into the future. So I called these answers predictions. And so I would sit and play with this in my mother's armchair. Oh my gosh, I don't know how many questions I would ask it. Does Tommy like me? Will I pass my math tests? What's the most important, like I would just be asking really weird questions, but I had fun seeing what the answers were. And so I said to myself today, I like that memory. I wonder if we could build a magic ball-like experience with flow. And I said, yes, we can. And can we learn from it? Yes, we can. There's a whole bunch we can learn from it. So today's flow for day 11 is create your own magic ball wizard. This is going to be an automated flow. And you're going to learn how to create an array and how to use random numbers in order to select one of those items in the array. And that will help you build this fun magic ball experience on Teams. So let's just quickly review our connector. So we're on day 11. And we want to create our own magic 8-ball wizard. And there's a picture of this is the bottom of it, so you don't see the 8, which is on the opposite side. And it had all this gel in it, and if you shook it, it would kind of float up to the top. I think there's a lot of DIYs on how you can make your own real magic 8-ball on Pinterest. But today we're going to magic 8-ball on just one connector, which is Microsoft Teams. And you'll note that I really do like using various connections in my flow. I think it makes it more interesting. It also enhances the experience. So I have less processes if we can combine them all into a special workflow. But today we're going to focus just on Teams, and we're going to talk about messages. All right, so let's go look at flow. And this is not one of those days that I will check templates first, because I'm 100% sure we don't have any templates about magic 8-balls. Okay, although we may have some templates about predictions because of AI Builder. All right, so I'm just going to start by doing new and then automated. Because here's how I think about this. Somebody's going to type a question. Flow is going to recognize that that question is for the 8-ball, and then it's going to answer it, replying to the message. All right. So I did do a little bit of prep, and I'll show you that. So this is the magic 8-ball demo on Teams that we're going to build together. And we're going to find when a message is posted. So when a new channel message is added. Okay, so I'm going to click on that and click create. And now we have our trigger. I'm going to pick my team, which is, I made one specifically for this called Magic Ball. And there's a channel called 8-Ball Questions. I probably could have been consistent about how I call this. All right, so then what we also need is the answers. And so what I did was I just went to Wikipedia and looked up the Magic 8 Ball. I found it, and they gave me all the questions. There's only 20. So what I did is I put them into a variable. And so I will give you the text file that contains the 20 questions. So I'm going to do initiate variable. Now, all of you that are parents and have your children sitting next to you, if you don't want them to know how the Magic 8 Ball works, then they need to go away right now, because it's going to get all self-evident in a few minutes. And it may spoil some people's perception of fortune tellers and predictions. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and initiate a variable. So I think I said initiate instead of initialize. So if I ever forget a word, I'll just cut it down a little bit and get that. So I'm going to initialize a variable, and I'm going to call this var answers. Really simple. This is going to be an array. It's important because the array allows me to select elements from it numerically. And those of you that may have noticed my video on what is an array, you might find that helpful if you've never talked about arrays. But in this case, those of you that have seen tables like in Excel or on SharePoint, you remember that on the left side of those tables are often a row number in Excel, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And in SharePoint, they're ID numbers, 1, 2, 3, and it just keeps increasing those numbers. In arrays, instead of those row numbers or ID numbers in SharePoint, what you have is you have index numbers. And the biggest difference between an array index and an Excel table that has those row numbers is that arrays start with the number 0 all the time. Okay, so what I'm going to do as the value of this is I have this in a text file that I put together for you, so that you can just copy and paste from it. So this will be included with the download, right? Now I don't want to paste it right in the value area, because create array is a formula, and so it needs to be in the advanced expressions area. And I don't know if you noticed that when you type an open paren, it gives you everything you need. And basically for the array, I just need to separate them by commas. And if the array is text, I need to put all the text in single quotes. And you can see that better in here. So don't worry about that underneath. But these are the 20 answers. And all I've done is separated them with commas. They probably should all have periods or not, right? I noticed that I'm a little bit inconsistent with my periods. But just make sure your periods, which is end of sentence indicators, are within those quotes too. Okay, everything for this particular array element needs to be within quotes. And you need to double check that. So I'll double check my text file so that you're not in trouble. And I used Notepad because Notepad will never make the quotes curly. And you want to make sure these quotes, these single quotation marks are all not curly. They're straight quotes. And then create array is the formula. So it must start with a paren and end with a paren. And so all of that is pasted in there. And now what we've got here is an answer array. Initialize answer array variable. Okay. So these are all the answers, okay? So next, I want to kind of get a random number, right? So I don't have to tell it, okay, get array 2, 3, 4. I want to find a random number. So we actually have a function for random. So I'm going to do compose, and then I'm going to just rename this composed random number. And then we're going to go over here to the right in the expression and type rand and open paren. Again, it's that open paren that gets you this IntelliSense, this syntax up above. And basically what it's asking for is a minimum value and a max value. And you know what I just realized? I don't think 0 is an integer. So those of you that are math smart, let me know. I may have to put a dummy in 0 or something, because 0 may not be an integer. All right, let's find out. Okay, so then we'll put that in there. So now we've got a random number. And then finally here, we're going to use it to pick one of the answers to reply. So I'm going to add my Teams connector and choose post a reply to a message, V2. And then I'm going to choose my team ID, my channel, and here it says add the team's message ID. But you notice when I click there, I'm not getting any ID numbers over here, but we do have a message ID. So what you can do is click over into expression whenever you don't see your tokens and just hit a question mark. And now you can go back and you'll see all of your tokens. You still need to be very careful. Even though you now see them all, you need to make sure that you don't put a non-compatible token in a non-compatible text box. So this text box is expecting an ID number, so I'm safe using the ID number there. Okay, as soon as I put the number there, I want to delete the question mark and say okay, and that'll put that here. This way it gets the message that was posted, because who knows, maybe the message is posted and then 6 things happen between that. We want to make sure we post the answer on the message that had the question. All right, and then finally I'm going to insert the outputs of the random number in here, but I'm going to also make a function, because what I want to do is I want to get that variable array, but I want to get index number random. Okay, so basically if I hit the question mark over here and come back, there's my var answers, which is my array variable. If I type that, or just click it and it goes there, if I wanted to get index value 1, I could just type 1. But we don't want to tell it what to do. We want that random number we got right here. So instead of 1, we're going to leave our cursor in between the brackets and choose the compose random number outputs. Okay, so now that's going to be our index number. And we're going to delete the question mark and say okay. You can also highlight this and bold it and stuff like that. I believe you can also change its color. Let's give it a try. All right. A lot of times when I'm doing heavy formatting, I'll put them in div tags so that I can control it. All right, so basically we've finished. The last thing I want to do, though, you might have spotted it in my text file, is I want to add a trigger condition here so that I don't have to put a condition after the trigger. So basically my trigger condition is going to be, you'll see I gave you a little challenge. Don't read that yet. Okay, trigger condition. I'm going to say anything in the body, so in the body of the message that starts with whiz. So the message body, every time somebody types in Teams, is really called this, the trigger body. So it's the body of the trigger and specifically the content of that message. Okay, so trigger body content, and it never changes. So whenever you're using this trigger to get to the text they typed, you want to refer to trigger body content. However, notice that I wrapped that in a starts with function. This always starts with @ Then I have a starts with function because I'm saying that this message must start with whiz. And I actually included a semicolon after whiz, which is important. If they don't include it, it will not work. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the settings of my trigger on the trigger conditions and say done. So now this flow is done. I did pretty good on time today. I'm going to save this one. And while we're going to actually post a message and then wait for the answer, And the answer usually can take between 2 and 3 minutes. It depends on what's happening in Teams and how many retries might be happening. But while we're talking about posting to things and how long it takes, I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about API calls, which you may have heard like at the water fountain or whatever. I want to explain to you how to think about that and show you some important docs. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this is saved. It should say saved here before I browse away. And now I'm going to browse away and go to my team site. And in my team site, I'm going to go to the 8-ball questions. I believe that's what I picked as my trigger. Yeah. And so then I'll start with Wiz and I'll ask a question. Will I win the lottery in 2020? I don't play much, but let's suppose I played. Will I win? Okay. So that's the question. While that's baking, because it'll take about 2 minutes, I'm going to take you to a different document that I'd like you to look at. I put it in my deck so you can see it. What is an API call and why do we care? So let's go to that page. This link will be in the description. So there are, when you're working in Power Automate, there are request limits and allocations on basically what stuff is going on. And the point of this is to manage performance and reliability. There's a lot of stuff going on. We don't want it to slow down. And also we want to be able to pick out any purposeful attacks where somebody might be just slamming the service on purpose to break it. So we set limits to keep all of those things under control. And basically these make requests. So we're all working with REST APIs, right? And so any request to that API would be an API request or an API call. What provokes an API request or an API call are connectors, the service itself, all of the steps within that service, as well as all CRUD operations, which is create, read, update, or delete, as well as operations like sharing or assigning. These all can and do provoke API calls or API requests. As an app maker and a flow maker, you'd want to limit your API requests wisely. So as you build your flow, you're thinking of ways you can reduce the number of calls or API requests. All right. And based on your license, you have a number of API requests permitted in a 24-hour period. Now, this doesn't mean that when you get to that number, Flow just says, get out, I don't like you anymore. It means that you can be throttled. And so because of that, you may face some unexpected experiences if you exceed the API call limits. All right. You have to find out what is your license to know where you fit. But I will tell you this, whether you're a 2,000 API requests for 24 hours or a 20,000 API request in 24 hours, it is really hard to hit those limits. And so I suggest you read this page carefully and also read the relevant pages that are at the bottom. So basically they have a little facts here and it'll tell you about this licensing transition and what would happen if you exceed capacity. And so you don't think of this as a blocker so much when you're building. So you see what it says here. End users will not be blocked from using the app for occasional and reasonable overages at this point of time. So Read over the page. Feel free to go to the community to post questions about this page, not beneath this video, but in the community. But I think it's important for everyone to try to understand what's an API call or request and how it can impact how your flows will run. Okay? Good to know. Let's go back to our 8-ball and notice that it says I'm going to win the lottery in 2020. So I love this 8-ball. And I guess I'm going to start playing the lottery because the wizard thinks I'm going to win. So this is the end of what are we up to? The 11th day. You know, we're heading toward half done here, right? The 11th day of the 25 days of flows, the Power Automate Advent Calendar. Happy holidays, and I will see you soon on day 12 of the 25 days of flows. Enjoy your journey. Play with these tools. They're fun as well as helpful. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.